Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm Revel No Shorty. You can tell things have moved around a little bit in the shop. There's a lot of empty space and boxes and stuff, and I'm at a slightly odd angle because it's the best I can do with the furniture I've got. But I'm still going to review Ribbon Queen. Yes, I am indeed, because it's one I've been looking forward to. It is Garth Ennis, who's one of my all-time favourite writers, responsible for some of my all-time favourite comic books, and I read Killer and Gillen, and Jason Burrows, who is a phenomenal artist who's worked with some of my favourites and Garth Ennis before, and I was really looking forward to this because these two writing horror and drawing horror, it's everything I wanted it to be. I'm going to talk about the artwork first, if that's cool, because I think Jason Burrows is spectacular and he knows how to do the kind of gory detail I absolutely love. There's, I think, a slightly different inker that I'm used to seeing with him in this one. I can't remember anyone off the top of my head, but they do use a slightly finer line for some of the detail work, especially on faces and stuff like that, and it's not like it's a bad thing. I actually quite like it, but my expectation was changed ever so slightly. And my expectation of the writing changed very quickly as well, because Garth Ennis has a little bit of a penchant for writing about soldiers, or at least men of action and men of war. And he also has a tendency to kind of idealize some of them. Quite often it's usually the rank and file, the grunts as it were, that are the heroes in his stories. Officers and such things are bad guys who make these people do bad things. And I like to think that, well, no, I like to think, I know that he has changed his mind and opinion on various things over the years. Go and read Dear Becky after reading The Boys Run, and you'll see that he's an artist who is more than willing to grow and change and admit that he does need to grow and change, and that is fantastic. And in this one, well, he definitely has changed a little bit from what I was expecting, and it's great. And this means I'm going to talk about politics for a while. I'm sorry to all the people who may be new to the channel. This probably be about a dozen of you. But this is something I've done for a while. But I am very, very into political explanations of stories, and I like weaving it into it. It gives an idea to talk about and discuss politics within comic books. I think that's something that should be done. It's a useful thing to do. So I was about 9 pages into this comic book, and I was like, this is 100% ACAB. 100%, not even subtle, laid out there on Front Street. Garth Ennis is attacking police officers in an effective way using actual real-world examples, or at least inspired by real-world examples and statistics, and he's framing it in ways which make sense for the story, because we have somebody who, as part of a SWAT team or whatever the equivalent would be, goes in to save a girl who's about to be murdered by a serial killer, and then thinks she has a right to her. He saved her, he was her special man, he was her hero, and he harasses her and stalks her, constantly messaging her, turning up at places of work, turning up at recovery, being far too physical with her. He's also massively homophobic, hugely misogynistic, and a terrible human being. There is reports of him throughout his career that he's been doing stuff like this, but when everything's brought up, the internal structures of not only the police department, but police wives and everyone else who is invested in the police being who they are, step in to make sure nothing happens to this guy. But this conversation is happening between a femme detective and a chief of police who's a person of colour. I may have got those titles up a little bit wrong, I can't remember exactly what their ranks are, but vaguely that's at least the vibe I'm getting. But they are still part of the system. The femme detective has just come back from suspension for doing something terrible by taking advantage of the rules that protect police. The POC captain is effectively trying to not necessarily brush it under the carpet, but he sees that the fact that this woman was saved by a serial killer at a time when everyone was hating on police was a really good thing, and he's trying to find a way to mitigate this, to cover his back, to make sure it doesn't come back on him or on the department. All of these things are part of what makes police a problem. And Garth Ennis, this hero of the working class soldier, is like, yeah, but this is still a problem, and it's really, really nice to see it. Now, all this is happening as a build-up to the horror that we're going to get to, and it is fantastic. It's a slow burn for most of the beginning, because a lot of it is set up, but it's really well done. Ennis has a fantastic eye for how people talk to each other. Burrows really effectively gets into this as well, with facial expression and physicality on their poses, how they're holding themselves during this conversation, slumped shoulders, exasperated expressions. It's all fantastic. But then something goes wrong. And it's after a very, very tense scene, and you feel like it's going to be like a payoff for the tenseness of the scene that happened before, but it isn't. It's taken in a whole different direction. There's a little bit in which thinks, well, was it a bit sudden? But it isn't. It's just, it's so horrific that it feels sudden. It's not like that scene in Hereditary, and I'm not going to say which one it is in case you haven't seen the movie, but there's a certain bit of unmitigated horror which happens at a point when your mind is on other things, and if you don't know it's coming, it is startling to the extreme. This isn't that. There's actually some setup to give you an idea that this person is going into a dangerous situation, but when you see what it is so extreme that it does feel startling. And that is a really impressive trick of pacing and setting. it works in a way that I didn't think it was going to in a comic book. I was genuinely upset by it, and I knew what the story was. I knew the nature of the horror. I've seen some artwork from it already. I say I'm a fan of these two people. I follow them on social media, and I followed what the company who publishing it are talking about. And I was still taken aback by quite what was going on. And then right at the end, a little twist in the tail, and we know what exceptional, amazing horror we've got to come, and I can't wait for more of it. I am sold. I'm into it. It's a 100% comic book that I love. It's on my pull list, and if it manages to maintain this level of skillful exploration of real-world issues and gut-wrenching horror with pacing and building up the tension throughout, it could be on my best of the year list, and I'm saying that right now after reading issue 1. I love it, and I hope you love it too. That's it for me for now. I'll try and do more reviews through the week, but as you can see, stuff's a little bit up in the air at the moment, but come next week we'll be in our new location, and everything will be a little bit more down to earth. Until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!